Hi, this is Jennifer Westrick, and this is my final oral exam. So a little bit about me is I taught for 15 years, beginning year 16 on Monday. I work in an elementary school where I teach STEM, and I'm the gifted resource teacher, and I'm also the gifted liaison, which just means that I do all the testing for gifted identification for the students in my school. I process all that paperwork. I keep up with the students. I make sure our AP has the students coded correctly and in the correct grade books for teachers, that kind of thing. So that's what I do, and this is what I have learned and want to continue to do. So the first course objective that I identified with was to evaluate personal beliefs and professional experience related to multicultural gifted education issues. Since I teach STEM classes, my first thought for my personal work was to eliminate gender bias. I immediately started thinking about gender because the STEM subjects have a low female participation. So in my second position paper, I had this quote from a Gay and Kirkland article. Teacher accountability involves being more self-conscious, critical, and analytical of one's own teaching beliefs and behaviors. And teachers need to develop deeper knowledge and consciousness about what is to be taught, how, and to whom. So as I reflected on that quote, I just want to make sure that I reflected on my own teaching practices to eliminate gender bias. I say I don't have gender bias, but it could be unintentional. So I wanted to focus on ways to make STEM subjects more inviting to females. So that was my first course objective. The second one is to examine gifted program policies and procedures through multicultural frameworks. This goes along with my role as the gifted liaison in my school. My first thought at the beginning of this class was that my school is majority white. We do have an increasing population of Asian students. So we don't really have a real problem with underrepresentation. My district does, but my thought was not my school. Then I thought, I need to go through and break down the data and see what is really going on in my school. So here is the chart that I made. So we have 653 students. That's not counting our pre-K students. This is current as of July 19. We have 139 students identified as gifted, which is roughly 21% of our student population. So I broke it down by the number of gifted students by race, the percentage of the school-wide population by race, and these numbers were 2018, so they may not be current, but that's what I had to go with, but current enough. And then the percentage of students represented in the gifted program by race. So our school-wide population of Asians, 25%. So 25% of our population are Asian students. And this is not broken out by Asians from China or Japan or other countries. We also have our main Asian population are Indian students. And as you know, those are different cultures. And so that's another future work that I'm going to focus on later is, how do we identify the different cultures of Asians? So we have 26 Asian students that are identified as gifted. And you can see that's only 19% of our student population. Our Hispanic students are 6% of the school. We have 3 Hispanic students who are identified as gifted, and that is only 2.2% of the population. Our Black students, we have 3% school-wide population. Only 2 students are identified, Black students are identified as gifted. And so here it's 1.4%. Our multiracial students make up 4% of our school, with 5 being identified as gifted. And that percentage is 3.4%. Here, our Caucasian population, 62% of our population are Caucasian, with 103 students being identified as gifted. That's 74%. So we have an overrepresentation of Caucasians in our gifted program, and an underrepresentation of other races. And then since I am focusing on gender bias, I wanted to break it down by female and male. I do not have the percentage of students school-wide who are female and who are male, but I do have the number of females. 68 females are identified as gifted. So out of that 139, that makes it 49%, and we have 71 males that are identified as gifted at 51%. So not too bad here, pretty close in range here. So we do have some work to do about our underrepresentation of our minority groups. So that is my second objective. In the preface of Ford's book, she says that Black and Hispanic students in Georgia remain at the greatest risk for under-identification. And that is something that we need to work on. And that is something that I plan to work on as my future plans and in my networking. So let's move on to my future plans. So my first plan is, of course, to look at my STEM class. So how can I provide role models to my female students? I want to focus on a different female in the STEM field each week or each month. That's one idea I have. I could also recommend or read books to students about females in the STEM field. And I'm still working out and planning my ideas. So if you have any, please send them my way. My second plan is to focus on increasing minorities in our gifted program, not just at my school, which I now realize that we do have work to do there. So I want to begin in my school, but then to take it to my district, because my district is woefully underrepresented in our minorities for gifted programs. Some questions that I have are, okay, where do I start? What can I do right now? What can I do in a few months, next year? So I have a few ideas that I want to do in this area, and I'm going to talk about that more in my networking slide. Okay, so my slide for networking. So one of the things that I want to start doing is to start having those courageous conversations, first with my principal, and then with my staff about gender bias, what it is, how do we recognize it, and how do we eliminate it, not just with, how we focus on, how we treat girls and boys differently, but are we having our expectations for boys to be one thing and girls to be another. And then to also have those conversations about our underrepresentation of the minorities in our gifted program. So a focus for that would be first to recognize that, have talks about it, why is it, and then what can we do about it? How do we encourage our girls to stay with STEM subjects? In elementary, I think it's easy to get the girls interested in the science and the math and the engineering and the technology. But as they get older, they start to lose interest. So how do we get them to stay in those subjects? And then also to have conversations about what the characteristics and traits of gifted students from different cultures are. Going back to the Asian population at my school, the cultures are different from our Indian population versus our Chinese population. What do those characteristics and traits of those gifted students look like? I know our teachers fill out a motivation form, and some Asian girls, particularly in the Indian culture, the girls aren't outspoken. They're not considered leaders by the white dominant, the word I'm looking for, the white dominant culture of what a leader is. They're quiet. They work quietly. They work, to themselves. They're not outspoken. And so those teachers will mark those girls down on motivation and leadership. But we need to focus on what's another way that we can see that they are being leaders. Is just in their culture. It's just different. And then another networking thing that I would like to work on after starting those courageous conversations is to start teacher training and professional development. I would like to develop professional development that will train teachers on identifying and eliminating gender bias to start with, and then develop professional development that will train teachers on identifying gifted students from different cultures. What are those traits? What are those characteristics? What do they look like? They're different from the white culture, And then my third one is to contact the district gifted coordinator to develop a process for using student portfolios or projects for gifted identification procedures. So instead of focusing on test and a certain number cutoff for test, let's look at what our students are actually doing in school. What is their work reflecting? What are their projects? It's a way that we can look at their motivation, their leadership, their creativity. So other ways to look at identification rather than just testing. So that's my oral exam, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your summer, and I will talk to you all later.